Hey, what's going on, producers? This is the track I'll be breaking down today. So in this track breakdown, I'm going to show you how to make your drums a little bit more energetic and have more momentum, some tips for your remix stems so you can make better remixes, and then I'll show you something that I've never done in any of my tracks before that I think is going to set this remix apart from other tracks, so some tips on how you can do that too. So let's jump into the track breakdown. Before we do, please consider subscribing, liking the video if you learned something, and for free samples, checklists, presets, and a bunch more stuff, check the links in the description below. There's a bunch of things that you can download right away. The track is 121 beats per minute, and the key is F minor. It's actually quite an upbeat sounding track, almost like uplifting energy. It doesn't sound sad or minor really at all, but that's a big misconception that minor scales always will sound like sad or ominous, but this is proof that you can have a minor scale sounding more like upbeat and happy. Kick drum, 2 layers, nice top layer cutting through, and then bottom layer here, bottom layer, nice and punchy sub. This kick drum is actually from Lotus Tunes Academy. Shout out to him for having an awesome channel. And then some EQ pushing up the sub and cutting off the very tops of the kick. Nothing major. The Sub Ninja is just a tool that actually checks the low end of sounds. So you can see just the sub up here and the rest of the instrument. Really cool tool. I'll put a link to some of the tools in the description as well, so that you can download these plugins if you'd like. This is something new that I've been doing. Actually, I've been putting the pre-mix after my kick. So instead of having like a pre-master, I'm having a pre-mix where I don't have the kick drum. The reason for this is because I have these 3 tools that I love to put on my pre-masters, but they do affect the kick in a negative way, I find. So I have the pre-mix, which literally is everything but the kick drum, and then I export that with my pre-master so that when I'm sending it to the mastering engineer, I already have these awesome tools on there. So this is the Intelligent Dynamics, is by Waves, and basically it just makes the instrument sound a bit more punchy and dynamic, like the whole mix. This is Gullfoss. It's a tool that subtly removes overlapping frequencies from overlapping, and phase cancellation, I believe it pushes things back up. I don't know exactly how it works, but it basically just adds like a subtle cleanup to the mix. And the last is the God Particle, which is my new favorite tool. Basically, it is a limiter and a saturator enhancement tool. It basically just makes everything sound beautiful. And so I like to use these 3 things sparingly so that I can increase the quality of my pre-master without relying on the mastering engineer. But I also don't want to use too much of these tools because I want the mastering engineer to be able to do what they do best. So I'll let you listen to all 3 of them turned off and on. For the bass group, this is how it sounds all together with the kick. The bass line has a lot of energy, it's really punchy, and it has a lot of character, which I really loved for this remix. So for the top layer of the bass, it's from the original track. The original stem actually had some reverb on it, which fit the original's track better, but I asked him to resend me the stem without the reverb, and then I EQ'd out the low end, added a bit of decapitator. Let's turn all these off. Okay, and then I have the track spacers from the soft sub and the 24 stem. So the soft sub is actually like a secondary groove. So I'll go to that after I show you the sub. So the sub sounds like this. It matches the bass line. But I wanted to add even more groove, so I added this soft sub, which sounds like this. And you're probably already thinking, why are you putting 2 sub layers over top of each other? But this is where track spacer, sidechain compression, and proper layering can come into play. Both these layers together sound bad without the sidechain. But if I sidechain really heavily with these track spacers, there's 2 of them. I could just use 1, but I used 2. I'm not really sure why. Basically what I'm doing is allowing that first bass layer to cut through the second bass layer. So the one's playing and then it goes boom, 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 boom. And you're allowing 2 subgrooves to happen. And that, I think it adds a nice extra layer of complexity and groove. It's a bit dangerous, but if you do it properly, it can be very effective. And I hope I did it properly. I like to think I did it properly, but honestly, it really elevates it. So I think the juice was worth the squeeze and figuring that out. Sometimes I try this, it doesn't work, but I think that it actually elevated that bass line quite a bit. And then I have the track spacer of the soft sub on the sub here. So it cuts out the sub, and then also on this one here, the other bass pluck, just to make sure that it's not overlapping. But also from 24, so if I go down to channel 24, that is the lead sound, and the lead sounds like this. It also has a little bit of the same frequency, or quite a bit of the same frequencies as the bass top, the pluck. So I want the lead to be cutting through the bass, because when the bass and the lead are playing, I want you to hear the lead more, because it's just the top end of the bass that's playing, the gritty bits, the ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? That part I can move out of the way for my lead, because the lead is more important at that part, as long as I'm not cutting away the low frequencies of the bass, because that would be dangerous. Sorry, I keep thinking someone's standing there. There's like a long hallway here. I'm at my friend's house in Toronto right now. I don't have a studio here, and I keep thinking someone's standing there, and I'm here alone. So it's kind of freaky. So that's why I keep on like, who's there? So the next bass layers here, I have the auxiliary kind of stabs. These are also from the original. This nice little accent ear candies. Whack. It's like a whip sound. And then again, all together with the kick. Right? Ear candy just brings a little bit of spice to that. And then lastly, I'm just changing the bass notes from the F to the G sharp and then down to the D sharp here. And that is gonna give that extra melodic action, especially in the breakdown and especially at the final drop. So I'll let you listen how that sounds. Because the melody of the lead is repeating so much, I can change the intonation or the feeling of the track by changing the bass line, even though the lead is remaining at the same melody. This is a really helpful way of elevating the track without changing the melody of the track itself. For the drums in this track, I wanted them to be a bit more energetic, and to achieve that, usually you can use a faster kind of hitting of the drum. So the faster the notes, typically the higher the energy feels, as well as the brighter, kind of more splashy, more high end in the drums, the higher energy it will feel. So looking at the hi-hats first, a lot going on. There's these 16th notes. I'll solo those. Even that on its own gives a bit of tension, a bit of speed. And all I did was take a hi-hat and actually cut out the beginning. Faded it in. So it's a bit softer, so it's not like super and then I put a bit of, wow, I sounded so Southern. And then I put a bit of auto pan on there. Wow, I tried to sound Southern after accidentally sounding Southern. Did not work. Then I have a hi-hat. This is actually like a galloping hi-hat, I call it, or like a swing hi-hat. Basically, I have the main hi-hat here. And then this is like the swing galloping hi-hat. This is like a kind of sounds like you're galloping. And these are really popular in progressive house. I learned this from like Eric Prydz' tracks years and years ago. And they just work by giving a bit of swing, and it's a bit more of like a fun drum beat. If I take that out, more traditional, and with it, It just adds a bit more momentum and makes the track feel a little bit faster. With a higher energy track like this, I thought that it made sense. I do have a lot of layers here. I'm cutting out a lot of the top end to compensate for that because there's a lot of buildup of frequencies in the top end when you have a lot of shakers and a lot of layers. That's why I EQ'd so heavily here. Second layer of hi-hat, just a hi-hat loop. This came from the original track. Again, cutting out some of that high end. And I like that it has that kind of tail. It's very swingy, very like, it adds a lot of flavor to it. It's not just, but gives it that bit of swing and movement. This open hi-hat is to accentuate the main hi-hat. This open hi-hat is giving that big splashy effect I was talking about. It makes it more energetic. It makes it bigger. It makes it hit harder. And what's great about this hi-hat here is it's filling up a lot of the high end, where this one is filling up more of like the low, well, still high, but like the lower end of the high end. And so together, they really hit both the high end and the low end, and it makes that feel like a really big hi-hat, and it really helps it cut through the mix. Shaker loops are very important, and I like to have multiple. It makes it feel more swingy, more humanized. A really big shaker loop here. Then there's another one here. So much movement. And again, these loops feel fast. They feel energetic. They feel like they have a lot of momentum. And that's very important because I don't want to slow the track down. If I use like a more kind of like old school traditional organic shaker, like a maraca or something, it's probably going to slow down the momentum. This one, it's fast. It has a lot of movement. So does this one. A lot of space, a lot of splashing and movement back and forth. And that's going to create that forward tension and that forward momentum to make the track feel more energetic. The processing on all these is pretty simple, just EQ. I have a clipper on some of them, which basically is just cutting off any of the peaks that are getting too loud. It works almost like a compressor or a limiter, but it's just cutting off those peaks. And I find that it can make your drums feel a little bit punchier if done properly, but it also can distort them. So you have to be careful on that. And then I have a vocoder, but this is just used in the buildup here to give a bit of a, like a white noise splashiness. Cool little trick that I do. Keep going through here. We have more shakers. I already talked about these. Some EQ. I have some sidechain compression from the hat. So when the hi-hat plays, it's actually squishing down the hi-hat here. So it's cutting into the hi-hat and squishing it, so that the hi-hat can punch through the mix just like a kick and bass and allow that hi-hat to really shine. For the clap, I've cut out a lot of this area here because the tail was just way too long. Lowered the pitch a little bit to match my track a bit better. It was a bit too bright. The EQ, I really wanted to mute this clap because it was just way too bright. Then the overdrive adds a lot of crustiness to it. And then again, a clipper in case there's any peaks that come up that I want to get rid of. Percussion loop, vital for this type of style. Especially adding that nice weird movement, crispy mids, filling up the drum loop. Let's take a listen to all the drums one more time and listening with and without this percussion loop and these shakers and that open hi-hat, and see if you can hear the big amount of energy change when I bring those elements back in. Pretty big difference, right? Also, how fitting is it that I'm at my friend's place when he has all these beautiful plants over here, so many nice plants, and I'm doing a video on the Soundgarden, and now I've messed up my... By the way, one of my next masterclasses is going to be a remix masterclass. So if you are interested in learning more about that or any of my other masterclasses, you can check the links in the description below. There is a waiting list for you to get notified first about the next masterclasses, or check out my full music production courses. Last but not least, for the drums, I have the return tracks. So the first return track is reverb. So I have just a really small reverb here, 700 milliseconds. And then I turn up my send until I hear the reverb coming through, but not so it's so loud. I just want to kind of kiss that drum so there's just a little bit of a wisp after. And I do this individually for each drum, seeing what fits the best. And then on the second layer, I have a New York compression or a parallel compression. And that is something that really bulks up the drums. I have a 2-minute video based on that. I'll put that up in the corner here so you can watch it after. Basically, you're just squishing the crap out of the original sound and then introducing a little bit of it back. So you're like really demolishing it, getting those really, really squished, gritty sounds, and then introducing that back into each of the layers. And that makes your drums feel more bulky. You can listen to the difference. It's subtle, but it can make a really big difference when you're trying to squeeze that last little bit out of your track. Going into the synths next, and this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where I show you something that I did that I've never done before. I put live guitar into my tracks. I played guitar for many years, so I thought it would be a cool idea to incorporate that into my music. And so this is going to set this part a track from a lot of other tracks that don't usually incorporate live instruments like this. My tip to you is try to think of something that you can do with your music to set yourself apart from somebody else, because there's a lot of people making really great music and it's harder and harder to stand out. So something even as simple as putting in live guitar to give me a competitive edge, because it is really hard these days to get your music heard by a lot of people. Let's take a listen to the synths. Okay, that wasn't the guitar part. There's a much more. It's not just that little. First thing is this stringy pad, which is just an augmented strings that I'm using to support the main elements of the track. Really nice way to just add a bit of like counter melody and support the main ideas. Right, it's actually really helping the guitar sound, which is this. Right, so this kind of backing pad that's assisting the guitar to feel a little bit more full and glued together in the mix. For the lead, there's 3 different stems, and this is what I was mentioning earlier in the video as well, is making your stems work for you. A lot of the time when you get stems, the automation and the effects are already baked into it, so you can't do too much about changing some of the sounds within the stem. But I like to try to cut up the stems, pitch them differently, up or down an octave, stretch them out, just try different stuff with the stems to make them work in your track without just relying on the same arrangement as the original track. So I've cut up the stems quite a bit here. I've pitched this one down a full octave, so it's really gritty and low. And then I've cut them up so they repeat over and over again at this part and they're not changing. And that's just the way that I wanted to arrange my track. These are the original pitch. This allowed for me to start introducing the guitar elements and allow the track to be, you know, expressed differently. And then there's a third layer, more spacey. And that one is also the same octave. And then on the final drop, they are different as well. So this one goes up an octave. This one goes up an octave. And this one goes down an octave. This allows for the track to feel different from the first drop, which is here. Then I go to the second drop, it's an octave higher. And that makes it much more interesting of a track because the first and second drop are different, but all I did was change the octave of the different layers, which gives it a different characteristic and timbre, even though it's the same stems. Barely any processing, just some EQ to make them fit each other a little bit better. On the lead group, just some compression to squish them all together. On the synths group, I do have a little bit of sidechain compression from the kick, just to give it a little bit of pumping effect, allowing that kick to cut through. For the guitar, I have some processing on the main guitar group, some EQ, some sound doctor, and some more EQ, and then some EQ on the different layers here, as well as delay. So I want you to hear what it sounds like without any processing. Not amazing, right? And that's why it is so important to have some good processing on here. So some delay and EQ, already way better. Right, already sounds much better, but then I go in with this Unison Sound Doctor. This is an amazing tool, highly recommend. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. And basically I'm adding, the shine is gonna make it brighter. The wobble is giving it a bit of like a pitch wobble, pushing up the width quite a bit. An echo, so more delay, a reverb, and then a compressor. All of this makes it sound so much better. It just sounds so much better with it. More EQ cutting out some of the muddiness, and then a compressor as well. Very subtle compression, subtle EQing there. But yeah, this processing absolutely elevates. The guitar that I used was not the best quality. It's not my personal guitar because I'm traveling. So I had to use this processing to spice it up, and I think it sounds wonderful. How I did this is I just basically played the track, played my guitar, and just took a bunch of different takes, which is like recordings. You listen, you play some stuff, you jam along, and you record it. And then if you like it, you keep it. If not, you try again. And so I just jammed along and took the sections that I really liked, and I put them into the song. I also have some other kind of licks down here. And then I have this distorted guitar where I've added some overdrive, some more reverb, some compression because it does get a little bit handsy, and then some EQ cutting out the highs. And then this EQ is cutting out the very, very top highs when it builds up, which you'll hear it definitely will. And it's just a dynamic EQ. So when the volume gets loud, it squishes it down. Sorry, one sec. There we go. Combining that with the rest of the track. Take a listen. Bass change here, very powerful. There it is. So again, using that bass against the melody is very powerful and driving that emotion behind the track. And there is one more thing that I did over here with some more guitar. So again, I just took these different ideas and I placed them in the track where I thought they made sense. This is in the mix out, like the outro. It didn't really work anywhere else. So by just recording for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, you can get a lot of ideas to put into your track. Of course, not everybody plays instruments, but this is just if you do, or if you have, some ideas for some synth things, it's a good idea just to play the track, write whatever you're writing. Don't focus on a big melody or a big arp or whatever. Just jam along, get some cool funky licks in, get some melodic things in, whatever works for your track, and then just put them in like a little graveyard over here, a little pile over here, and whenever you want to try and grab one of them and throw them in the track, you can. I do this a lot of the time for different atmospheres and pads and melodies. There's some other guitar licks or a guitar melody I didn't end up using. Right, super simple, and then I just have 3 layers, the left layer, and then I play this an octave higher, and then the third one I played an octave in between, or I played it at the same octave as before, but I played it on a different string. All 3 of these layers, and the same with the lead, when you have multiple layers playing something that's similar, like the same melody, but a little bit different, you can, oh my gosh, that scared the crap out of me. I thought somebody was standing there again. Damn it. You can play this 3 melodies and they just sound a little bit different, and it will build up the track so that they feel more full and more interesting, even though you're doing the same melody. It's just a little bit different with the 3 layers. So another example is these 3 leads here. Right? They're more powerful together, even though they're the same melody. Another ear candy that's actually is pretty important to the track is this one right here. You may not even have noticed this in the track, but now that I point it out, I guarantee you, you'll be able to hear it very obviously. So it's this like vocal hit. It has this moving LFO. So it's slowly opening and closing, some auto pan, delay. It's also being squished by the lead sound. So when the lead plays, it squishes this down with the track spacer so that there's not any overlapping frequencies. And I do this with a lot of instruments in the track so that whenever the lead is playing, it's squishing down the other elements like the bass, for example. So the bass actually has, the bass top has this 24 squishing it down. When the lead is playing and the bass is playing, so the tops of the bass don't need to be heard as well as the lead, but you don't want the bass lower frequencies to be cut out. So I'm not using a traditional compressor, I'm using this track spacer because then I can only focus on the layers of the sound that are overlapping in the top end. So I can tell the track spacer to squish down anything that's overlapping above 180 hertz. It leaves the sub and it allows for the lead to squish down some of the top layer of the bass without compromising the low end, which is really important because they are taking up a lot of the same frequencies. So now that I've pointed these vocal ear candies out to you, see if you can notice them in the mix. Even though they're quiet, they're still there. And just little sounds like this can really break up the monotony, even if they're really subtle and they're quiet in the background. They're there to just tickle your ear and give you something else to listen to. Shout out to Solus and Soundgarden for bringing me on to do the remix. If you want to see how I made my other Soundgarden remix, then check out this video right here. Or if you want to download a bunch of project files, presets, and samples, click the link right here. And if you want to watch a video YouTube thinks you'll like, then check out this video right here.